Hey, my friends, it's Mary Rose here. I'm going to put this little banner down in a second because I'm so little that when I put a banner up like this, I feel like a kid peering over the countertop, right? But just so you know, I'm here broadcasting live from my home in California. We're on YouTube and we're on Facebook at the same time. But if you're watching on Facebook, this is a little instruction for you. StreamYard.com/Facebook is where you need to go. It's right above where this video is playing right now. You click on it and it will say permission to show your name, and you say yes, and you'll be back with us and we will know who you are. And the reason that's so important to me is that we are live and your comments are so welcome. I would love for this to be a conversation. Waving hello to Chris, who's already said hi in the comments. So if you're on Facebook, you can leave comments and I'll see them. And if you're on YouTube, you can also leave comments and I'll see them. So we'll have a conversation. And today that is particularly on point because our theme today is going to be about our feelings about writing, our feelings about being writers. The title for this live stream is Keep Writing, Be Happy. So you already know how this ends. It's going to end with you writing and happy. But that's not where we're going to begin, because I think you all know, you writers out there, my dear storytelling friends, that it's not always so simple, is it? Our feelings can be complicated. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about why they're complicated. I want to talk about how that changes or doesn't change depending on where we are in our journey as writers. And most importantly, I want to give you 5 concepts. Think of them as pieces of advice from a mentor with a little bit of experience about how you can better understand and better manage the inevitable roller coaster of emotions that just goes with the job. It just goes with the job. Okay. So for anybody who might be new to this live stream, indulge me for just a moment of introduction. I'm Mary Rosewood. I myself am a writer. I'm an author. I teach from my own practice, as we say. I teach from my own long experience as a human being in the creative zone who found my way to writing fiction close to 20 years ago. And in that time, I've published 14 novels with Big 5 publishing houses. I am best known for my middle grade fiction. The most recent one is Above My Head, that there, Alice's Farm, A Rabbit's Tale. And it's a particularly apt book for this time of year, this harvest season, because it is about life on a farm, but it's also about much more than that. And I hope if you haven't checked it out yet, you will. It came out in paperback recently and is waiting for you wherever you like to buy books. I go live on Wednesdays, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, and this live stream is about writing. It's about your practice as a writer. It's about story structure. It's about writing craft, and it is also about the mindset of the working writer. And that is the category that today's live stream is going to fall into. And as much as I would like to say that all you have to do is say, well, I studied story structure and I studied writing craft, so now I'm good to go. The truth is, in any endeavor, if your mindset is not ready to do the work, you're not going to get the work done, even if you have all the technique in the world, right? So we have to talk about mindset, and that's true. I want to wave hi to Cynthia, who's here live. It's great to see you, Cynthia. And I want to say hi to Robert. It's good to see you here. Not only a writer, but an illustrator. And welcome to the live stream, Robert. I hope you'll become a regular. We have some regulars here, and I love it. All right, my friends. The roller coaster of human emotions experienced by writers. Let's talk about it. I want to dive into the big question. Why do we have so many feelings about our writing? We don't have the same level of reactivity about our cooking, do we? About getting dressed in the morning, about what we're making for dinner, about walking the dog. I mean, we go through our lives feeling okay about a lot of things. Obviously, there are times of tragedy, times of trauma, times that our emotions are more volatile. But there is something about writing, is there not? Am I right? That just seems to touch a kind of vulnerability that is a little bit extra. And it's not just the writing itself, although it is the writing itself. The process of writing stirs the pot emotionally, sometimes brings up a lot of resistance, the kinds of feelings that make us doubt ourselves, make it hard to sit down to work, all that stuff. But it's also what happens later when we are embarking on careers as writers, how we feel about querying, right? How we feel about approaching agents, how we feel about waiting for a reaction. And those many, many times in a writer's life that we've sent things out into the world and we're like, hello, is anybody out there reading my manuscript? How long am I going to have to wait for feedback? Our emotions churn, right? And what other kinds of emotions? There can be envy, there can be crises of confidence, all kinds of things. It just seems like our feelings get a little extra when it comes to our writing careers. So I wanted to first examine why that is, because understanding why that is going to be a huge help to navigating these extra stormy seas, right? And I'm going to bring in a little assistance because there's a quote that I really like, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen if I can. There you go. I hope you can all see that. So this is a quote from a scholar named Harold Bloom. Anybody who's gone to grad school or interested in literary criticism, you've probably heard of Harold Bloom. He's written about a ton of things, not without, some of his ideas not everyone agrees with, but definitely an influential thinker. And this quote really strikes a chord with me, so I want to share it. We read not only because we cannot know enough people, but because friendship is so vulnerable, so likely to diminish or disappear, overcome by space, time, imperfect sympathies, and all the sorrows of familial and passional life. Interesting quote, right? There's a lot in it to unravel. And, I don't know the sorrows of Harold Bloom's familial and passional life, but I think what he's talking about here is embodied with tremendous power just in the opening phrase. We read not only because we cannot know enough people. So let's take out the not only, because he's making a compound argument here. He's saying that there are reasons that we read, and one of them is because we cannot know enough people. It's not the only reason, but that's one of the reasons. We read because we cannot know enough people. Now think about that for a minute. Right away, he's placing reading as not just an entertainment, but as a means of connection with others. We cannot know enough people to satisfy our need to feel connected to others. There's not enough hours in the day, right? To know enough people, to be known deeply enough by enough people to satisfy our hunger to feel connected, to be seen, to know and be known. That is powerful stuff right there. And that is going to be the underpinning of some of the things that I say later. So think about it. Really take that to heart. And then let me just look at the next thing he says. It's not just because we cannot know enough people, but because friendship is so vulnerable, so likely to diminish or disappear. And then he lists the reasons that friendship is vulnerable: space, time, imperfect sympathies, and family and passional life, our romantic lives. So friendship is vulnerable because people move away. We don't have time for each other. We have imperfect sympathies with each other. We outgrow each other, perhaps, right? And the sorrows of familial and passional life. So we get wrapped up in our own problems, and friendship takes a back seat. That's what he's expressing here. So now let's put those two ideas together. And the first is that we read because we can never know enough people to feel sufficiently connected, right, to others. And we also read because the friends that we do manage to have, we may lose very easily. Our friendships are vulnerable. There are all kinds of ways that life comes in between us and our friends. And the implication, of course, I'll bring myself back up on the screen here so we can see me as well as this quote. The implication, of course, is that reading is not as vulnerable to all of these difficulties, the difficulties of having enough friends and of keeping those friendships. He offers reading as a kind of solid, steady, reliable source of feeling connected to others. Now, I bet this wasn't how you were expecting me to start this live stream, right? But this is the concept I want to dig into, because to me this is why it's the real answer to the question why we have so much emotional reactivity about writing, about this experience of reading and writing and what it means to us. In this quote, we explore the idea that reading and writing, our relationship to it is relational. Our relationship is relational in an emotional sense, in the sense of intimacy, in the sense of connectedness. Now, I want to remind those of you who may have been to previous live streams, you've heard me talk a little bit, and quite recently, in fact, about reader engagement and the types of things that really engage readers. And one of the examples that I use is a reference to the psychological idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in which, issues like survival, belonging, safety, belongingness, status, and self-actualization are placed on this hierarchy, that we've got to deal with the needs at the bottom of the pyramid before we can really deal with the things that come next. But that all human beings are driven by these things. It's very useful to think about, because we are students of character psychology, character motivation, right? That's one of the things that we writers, we storytellers do. We wonder what makes people tick. And what makes people tick is the drive for survival, the drive for safety, the drive for connection, the drive for status, and the drive for self-actualization. It's a very basic look, but also very comprehensive at what motivates human beings. Connection is one of the big ones. Survival, safety, and connection, belongingness, the feeling that we are in relationship to others, that we have a home, a family, a tribe, a town, that we are not stranded, that we are not on a desert island by ourselves talking to a volleyball with a face painted on it. And those of you who know the reference, I'm talking about that wonderful movie with Tom Hanks called Castaway. It was always the most primal form of punishment to banish a person from society, to banish them. It's been part of an understanding. Culture has understood this, that you cast people out is the worst thing you can do to them. It's the worst thing you can do to somebody in the middle school lunchroom. And it's the worst thing you can do to an adult friend group. And it's just the worst thing you can do, that feeling of being cast out. Harold Bloom's quote tells us that reading is not just entertainment. It's not just a form of study. It's not just a form of being culturally literate. It is driven by that impulse that human beings have, this like hardwired need for connection. So I hope that point has now, it's kind of taken root in everybody, because here's what I want to say next. The reason that our relationship to our writing practice is so volatile is because we have relationship drama with our writing. It's like it's the way that we react as in those moments of vulnerability in our interpersonal relationships. Now, I want you to, get in the hot tub time machine for a moment. Imagine yourself, the protagonist of the YA novel of your life. In other words, go back to when you were a teenager and maybe first discovering what might happen if you saw someone across a crowded room or met someone who just activated your desire for connection. And you're young and you're unskilled. These feelings are new to you and they're overwhelming, right? It is relationship drama. You get wacky. You become obsessed. You become insecure. You don't know whether to cling or to play it cool and hold back. You write about it in your journal. You start to get a little it's a mad love is a form of madness. The poets know this, right? Relationship drama is a thing, and it's not just a thing for people who are psychologically maladapted to relationships. It's a thing for everybody. That drive for connection is so powerful that we get a little woozy and overreactive emotionally when it is activated, when it's driving the bus. So relationship drama is a way of thinking about the volatility of our feelings about our writing, because it's all coming from that same place. Now, Harold Bloom is talking about as readers, we get this, right? But fundamentally, it is the same thing when we're the ones doing the writing. And in a way, it's even more raw and vulnerable, isn't it? Because it's not just that we're reading a book that makes us feel not so alone in the world, right? We're trying to write something that is going to create that connection with an imagined reader. And so our vulnerability about wanting to be seen accurately and wanting to be deeply understood and powerfully connected to others it's times 10, in my opinion. It's 10x when we're the ones doing the writing. So, what does it do to our emotions? Well, what does teenage relationship drama do to anybody's emotions? It gets your insecurity ramped up. It gets your basic sense of whether or not you're lovable on the chopping block. Like it puts it out there and it says, "Are you though? Are you lovable? Do you really believe that you are to your core? Are you okay the way you are?" So it really stirs the pot of that insecurity. It also triggers whatever our typical patterns of attachment may be, right? And this is another psychological topic, which we don't have to get into deeply. But the bottom line is that some of us are okay with being alone and okay with being with others, and we don't feel more or less worthy. We can maintain a appropriate level of closeness with others without becoming like codependently attached and glommed on, or without becoming overwhelmed. But those are really emotionally healthy people. Is that most of us? I think a lot of us toggle between not knowing how close to be. We get too close and then we pull back, and that is the insecure attachment style. It's a very typical. It's very normal that we form connections with other people, and sometimes we're like, am I coming on too strong, or should I play it cool? Other people approach us and they want to be friends, and we might have the same reaction to them. We might say, oh, so much friendship all at once, maybe I'll just let that call go to voicemail for a while. Or we might say, they stopped texting me. Why did they stop texting me? Don't they want to be friends anymore? You see that insecurity gets stirred up when this relational drive is at play. All right. So we cling, we run away, we do all these things. This is because this is our core psychological vulnerability. We just want to know that we're okay. We're in connection. Are we loved? Are we part of the world? Or are we rejected or all alone in the world? These are the deep questions. So this is the relationship drama that we have with our work. Now, I just wanted to assure you, and I don't know if this is going to make you feel better or worse, that this is not something that changes when you have outside validation, when you start having some of the markers, let's say, of success that many aspiring writers are really eager to have. If you get an agent, or if you get a publishing deal, your book comes out, you get reviewed, you get sales. That's what I mean by external validation, external proof, external success, in air quotes. We imagine when we are getting started as writers, when we're early on the path, that the reasons that our feelings are so volatile is that we just haven't yet been validated sufficiently by externals. But that is not a correct belief. It's not a correct belief. Our emotions are volatile at the beginning of our writing journey because writers' emotions are volatile for the reasons that I've just talked about. We're in a relationship. It's relational. It's that really, really overblown vulnerability that has to do with our need to be in relation with others. So external validation doesn't fix it. It doesn't really change it. So if you're hanging on to a belief that, oh, this is really hard right now, and I'm not sure if I should even be doing this. I don't know if I'm any good. I don't know if this is a good use of my time. I don't know if I should invest money in a class. Maybe I'm just wasting my time. I mean, if your insecurities and your feelings about it are all stirred up, and you tell yourself, if I could just get an agent, or if I could just get a book deal, right? Then I'd know, and I could just calm down. I'm so sorry to tell you that that is not going to happen. I hope that you get all of the external validation that you crave. But guess what? When we're talking about relationship drama, outside reassurance does not change our internal state when it comes to how we feel about our right to be in the world. We either feel okay or we don't. And other people saying to us, oh, no, you are lovable. You're fine. You're great. Yes, we're totally friends. It's all good. Does that change anything if on the inside you're not sure? I put that question out to you. Anybody wants to just offer any replies in the comments, you're more than welcome to do so. But you can also just think about it, because I'm imagining that you're seeing that what I'm saying is valid, right? There are certain types of feeling okay within ourselves that only we can create. So all of that external validation is terrific, but it is not nourishing the way we imagine it's going to be nourishing. It doesn't settle anything. It feels good. I want you to have a party when you get an agent. I want you to, open all the champagne when you get a book deal. I want you to celebrate with your loved ones when things go your way, when your books come out, even when you finish your first draft and it's a hot mess, but you type the end. I want you to text your friends. I want you to let the pigeons loose, as they say in the circus. Let her rip. But just know that fundamentally, it's not going to change how you feel on the inside. You either have a security in saying, no, I'm a writer. I do this. I accept that I'm on this path. I'm called to do it. And there are going to be ups and downs. You're either at the place where you've found a center that feels good, that doesn't need a lot of external validation, or you're on your way to creating that center. And that's okay too. For many of us, it is a long journey. It's a long journey. Okay. I was just talking a little bit about what the types of insecurities of emotional volatility we may have when we're early in our journeys, right? I just mentioned, even feeling shy to call yourself a writer, even not knowing what to say when someone asks, so what are you doing this weekend? And you're like, well, I'm working on my novel. You're like, excuse me? Oh, I'm working on my novel. Oh, no, I can't come play pickleball with you on Saturday. I'll be home working on my novel. Most of us, early in our careers, I try to keep it a little bit on the down low because we feel like posers just saying these things. We feel like, maybe I'm just not going to make myself vulnerable to other people's reactions just yet. We haven't owned it. We haven't owned the label. We haven't owned the identity. We don't have a sense of worthiness about it, right? So that's very normal in the beginning, right? When you're on your way, that you may change things, right? Things may change, and people know you're a writer. They'll stop inviting you to pickleball during your writing times. You said enough. They said no enough times. Oh, Saturday morning, she's home working on her novel. Leave her alone, you know. But then other things will come up. You'll be monitoring your relationships with your team, your agent, your editor. You know, if you're in the publishing realm, if you sort of cross that hurdle. If you're independently publishing, you may be looking at your analytics. You may be checking how many people open your author newsletter. You know, there are always ways to seek external validation when we're not feeling totally okay within ourselves, right? And so you'll find those ways, and those may be the ways that you get your emotions on a seesaw. If you look for external validation and you find the answer you're seeking, you'll be on a high. If you look for external validation and you don't get the answer you're seeking, your emotions are going to plunge. And I just want to remind you, it starts to feel a little crazy making, but just imagine yourself in the middle school, you know, lunchroom, and the object of your affection, like your first crush, your first mad crush, walks by and says, "Hey," and continues walking by. You can spend the rest of the day interpreting that hey. Am I right? You can say, they said hey to me. They like me. That was such a good hey. That was like a positive, like, I think I love you too, hey. Or you could say, they said hey, they don't even like me. They think I'm stupid. They don't want to be my friend, you know. You can stay up all night writing in your journal about that hey. This is the danger of seeking external validation about relational issues, right? Because we're just gonna stir the pot. And the truth is, it's all inside anyway. Um, I see Robert's got a great, I'm going to bring it up if you don't mind, Robert. I want to share this comment. Robert has shared, I always feel better when I get stuff done rather than getting validation. Writers groups are great. And because someone makes a comment, it's from a place from someone who knows the journey. Awesome. Let's hold on to that thought, Robert, because we're going to get to my 5 pieces of advice, and you are definitely in aligned with some of the things I want to advise people to do. I did want to also conclude, though, on our journey of like being volatile. But what about if you're really successful? Like, people will ask me that sometimes, like, surely so and so, and they'll name like an author who's on the bestseller list, an author who's had a movie made of their stuff, an author who's making a very good living from their writing, and the assumption is, well, surely so and so isn't on a roller coaster of emotions. So and so, whoever that icon of like real success is, at this point, they're cool, right? They're fine. They don't have the same stresses about writing that the rest of us do. And so the real solution for our emotional volatility is to just get to be that level of success. Well, I'm so sorry to tell you that as they say, more money, more problems. Like, when people are really successful, that's terrific. I think being really successful is awesome, and I wish it for everyone. But you've just got a whole new set of things to freak out about at that point, right? I think it speaks for itself. We all know that becoming rich and famous is not the golden road to serenity and happiness. We see too many people who on the outside seem very privileged, struggling and having difficulties. It's very easy to find examples of that. So I'm not gonna try. But it just doesn't change, because whether you're a beginner or you're like early in the game, or you've achieved some stuff that would have been a dream at one time in your life, maybe you've really achieved some level of success. The wiring for relationship drama regarding our work is still there. So what should we do? What should we do to be calmer about it, to make this more sustainable, right? We want it to be sustainable. We want it, if this is our life's work, we want it to be a good life. We want it to be an emotionally healthy life. We don't want it to be a life that makes us stressed, that we lose sleep over, that makes us, so out of sorts that we don't take care of ourselves physically. We don't want it to spoil our relationships with those friends in real life that Harold Bloom reminds us are are there for us, but those friendships can be vulnerable, just like a garden if we don't tend them. So, what do we do? Well, the first piece of advice that I want to offer is to be a student of yourself. We call this self inquiry. If the things that I'm talking about here, ring any bells with you at all, that's just a sign that there's stuff to explore. Now, when you're a writer, when you're a storyteller, you are or should be a student of human nature first and foremost. We have to be thoughtful and curious observers of human nature because that's our topic. That's what we have to offer, is our take on it, what it means to be human. And so you're human too. And so be a thoughtful and curious observer of yourself. What triggers the roller coaster in you? What inner script do you have about being a writer? What makes the seesaw go from positive to negative? There's your stuff that triggers you. And I know all of the things it might be, but only you can be the real expert on yourself to know what it is. See what you can discover from them. Does envy play a role in your seesaw? Are you feeling okay? And then you go on social media and there's somebody that you see and they're announcing a new book deal, or they're, teasing like good news coming soon, wish I could tell you, like whatever it is, like all of this chatter goes on in the great middle school lunchroom of the writing community. If something out there triggers you, take it as information. Just let it be a clue to where you've got to do some work to do on yourself. Don't let your, writing drama be middle school relationship drama. It's, you don't have to live that way, but you've got to start by figuring out what sets you off. All right. And once you can name it, just like anything else, once you can name it, you can have some compassion for it. You could have some distance from it. You can say things to yourself like, oh, look, it seems that I have a belief that there's only enough success to go around for one person and it's already been used up. And so when somebody else gets it, there's none left for me. Like that's a mistaken belief, right? So you can look at that and you can try to untangle it a bit. But most of all, have compassion for yourself, my dears. Please, like don't say, oh, I should be better than this. I shouldn't be so easily triggered. I hope I've made a case today for letting you understand why you are so easily triggered, why we all are so easily triggered when it comes to this aspect of our lives. It's not our fault. We're hardwired to have this hyper attentive, quality about our feelings of belonging, of being accepted, of being okay in the eyes of others. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. So have some compassion for it. Give it a cute little name. Invite it to sit on the sofa next to you, but start to get to know what sets you off. Get a little curious about that. As part of your self-inquiry, my second piece of advice is to adjust any unrealistic expectations you may have. And if you expect to feel confident all the time, that's unrealistic. If you expect that every single day that you've put on your calendar, that's my writing time, that you're going to just eagerly spring, like a happy dog waiting to be walked into the writing chair and say, I can't wait to get to work today. Woohoo. That is not a realistic expectation because writers resist writing. Right? All writers resist writing. Some days we want to do it. Some days we're like, oh, I don't really feel like doing it. There's a famous quote. I have it someplace in my notes. Oh, I know it by heart. I don't need to find it. Dorothy Parker. I'm sure many of you know who Dorothy Parker was. A tremendously witty person, known, among many other accomplishments for being able to, deliver a quip that we still will quote decades later, as I'm about to do. And what she said about her writing is that I hate writing. I love having written. That's such a great summation of what writing resistance feels like, right? We hate it sometimes, but we love having done it. Okay. So what other unrealistic expectations we might have? We might have unrealistic expectations about how the industry works, for example. We might assume that, positive or negative, we might assume that, oh, it's impossible to get published, and so I'm just wasting my time. Well, obviously, it's not impossible to get published. Look at the libraries, look at the bookstores. They're full of books. There's new books coming out all the time. So if we have an unrealistic expectation that's negative, examine it, let it go, or we may have an unreal expectation that it's my first novel. It sounds good to me, and therefore the next step is to query it. Is that realistic? Is it possible that your very first novel is not ready for the big leagues? That's a little bit like saying that a kid goes to their first game, gets on the little league team, hits a single, feels pretty good, and says, well, that's it. I'm in the game now. I might as well call up the Yankees and see if they need me. It's a long journey between getting started and being ready for the big leagues, the pros, right? Being ready for readers. That's what publishing means to me. To publish your work means to say, it's done. It's now ready for my readers. However you connect with your readers, whether you are published by a publishing house or whether you publish independently. Publishing is a big move. It's crossing a big threshold. It's when you've said, no, this is ready for other people. It's no longer a work in process. I'm telling you that if your expectation is that is the next step, that there's two steps. One is I write it, two is I publish it. You're missing a lot of steps. You've got to deal with unrealistic expectations. It will only cost you more heartache down the road when you don't get the external validation that you crave so deeply, right? So any unrealistic expectations that you may have about how the process of developing as an artist works, how the process of getting your work in front of readers works, take a look at them and see if you can bring your expectations closer into alignment with reality, because it'll save you a lot of frustration. Okay. So that's one thing. The third thing, and Robert, who's here, whose comment I just shared, already tapped upon this, and I want to go into it a little deeper. It's such an important thing. Find a writing community. Find a writing community. It's so helpful to not be alone with this. When you are having relationship drama, you think you're losing your mind, right? You think you're the only one that's ever felt this way, this much, it's all new. You're 13 years old and this has never happened before in the history of humanity. No one could possibly understand your feelings. But we those of us who are older and survived those years know that that's not the case. And I also want to say, it's not that you become immune to the love sickness, to the thunderbolt, as my people say, later in life. Of course, this is what happens. This is the way it works on us. So finding a writing community puts you right away. If you find a right community, a supportive, positive community, it gives you a sense of like, okay, I'm going through this thing, but everybody goes through it too. It puts it in perspective for you. Your writing partners, your critique group partners, whatever community you find that really feels good to you, you're all going to be going through the same thing. You're all going to be going through the agony of waiting for an answer, right? I asked them to the prom. I'm waiting for the answer. It's so fraught with feeling. It's not just waiting. It's vulnerable, raw waiting. It's just the way it can feel sometimes when we're waiting for an answer from an agent, from an editor, from a contest that we may have entered, right? Let your community reset your buttons and just say, no, we all go through this. It feels like a lot. How can we help distract you? Let's be a joyful community. Now, I want to talk about writing communities for a minute because they can be great, but I also want you to be discerning. It's always a good thing to be discerning in life, right? Find a writing community that is driven by positive energy and that is not driven by resentment and meanness And this is not a call out to anybody in particular at all, but I do want to remind you, as if anyone needs to be reminded in this day and age, that negative energy actually does really engage people. It really grabs people's attention. A look at social media and some of the things that we're learning about social media these days simply is evidence that anger and envy and nastiness and criticism, are things that bring people together, but for negative cause, for negative reason. And so it is possible for communities to form around or be fueled by negativity. It's unfortunate when that happens, but it is possible. And if you find yourself considering whether this writing community is good for you, or if you're part of a writing community and it seems like it might be veering in a negative direction, be discerning. That's not really going to help you. You want to be in a community of people who get it, who understand what you're going through. They don't all have to be at the same level, career-wise or skill-wise. I think it's nice if there's a little variety, because the truth is, no matter where you are in the journey, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to create something that's good, that connects with readers, and that expresses ourselves in a way that we're proud of, that we want to leave a legacy. Our writing is our legacy. It's such a powerful thing to think of. Our writing, if we get it right, is going to be around long after we are not. And that is an amazing gift, to be able to create a legacy like that. And so it doesn't matter where you are in the journey. We're all striving for the same thing. And look, speaking of connection, as you can see by the tail, my cat has just jumped on to help me with the live stream. Ralph, thank you for your assistance. I'll see if we can get him on camera in a minute. So I see it sometimes. Let me just wrap up this point about being discerning about negativity. Hating on the publishing industry or hating on successful writers, that's not going to help you. Being envious of the success of people who have the kind of success that you dream of is not going to help you. So those are the kinds of negative emotions, that you got to be careful of, and groups can really indulge them. They can really fan the flames of them. That is not to say that the industry is not above critique, or that there isn't stuff to critique about it. Of course there is, but the people who are trying to support more books in more readers' hands, we're basically all on the same team. And I think it's important to remember that. As part of this idea of finding a community, I want to find a little subheading in there, but we can call it, that was the third. Finding community was my third tip, but we'll call this the fourth tip. As part of your community, seek mentors. Make sure that your community and your support system includes people who are a few steps ahead of you on the journey, because it will make a huge difference to your own progress. Don't be afraid of being around more experienced writers. Welcome it. Success leaves clues, as they say, and you will benefit by seeking to be part of communities where there's mentorship on the table. Now, that could happen casually in a critique group, that could happen in any number of ways. It can also happen by seeking out training, getting involved in a class or a program. It is also true that authors nowadays are more accessible than ever before, but you can seek out authors who you admire. I just want to caution you that not every author who's out there on social media is available to mentor you. Those who want to mentor writers are going to make it known. They will, step up, they'll mentor, they'll teach, they may have classes, workshops, they may do, they may have YouTube channels, as I do. They will let you know that they're really interested in mentoring. Many of them are. So just know that is something that you should really consider. Find the mentors that you admire, and don't be shy about saying, I need mentorship. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Creative people have been doing this kind of work for a long time, and you are not you don't have to start from nothing. You can build on the skills, the experience, the training, the wisdom of people who have gone before you. Okay. Think of yourself as part of a lineage, right? Part of a lineage of storytellers, of artists, not as someone who is all alone in the world trying to make it happen. That's where your sense of connection can really come from, in my experience, to sort of connect with that identity of not only am I a creative person, but I'm part of a lineage of creative people. And we have a role to play in keeping humanity on, on the right side of things. That's another topic for another live stream. But to me, that is what art is really for. So find mentors. And then the most important thing of all, my fifth and final tip for you guys, keep writing. Keep doing the thing. Don't give up doing the thing that you're drawn to do. If you get tied up in a knot about actually getting to work, it's and you take away the joy of the creative process. You're taking away your intrinsic reward for doing the work. If you let any of this drama, this relationship drama, get in the way of really sitting down and letting your creative juices fly, you're doing yourself a disservice. If you find yourself thinking like, but I'm not really a writer, is this ever going to pan out? Am I ever going to get paid to do this? That's none of that feels good. But writing feels good. When you actually sit down to do it, it feels good to create. It's like being a child again, it's that childlike creative impulse feels good. And I quoted the Dorothy Parker, witticism. I hate writing. I love having written. And I just want to put that in some context because, she was not a person who was preaching, positivity, warmth, and light. She's a very sharp-witted and often sarcastic jokester. And when you say, I hate writing, but I love having written, I just want to say, would you say, if you were a dancer, I hate dancing, but I love having danced? No, dancing is the whole point. Am I right? So please remember, it's a little bit like doing physical exercise. A lot of people say I should exercise more. But getting started is the tough part. But then once you do it, you're always glad you did, right? You don't ever say, oh, I so regret that I got a little movement in today. I so regret that I took a walk in the beautiful outdoors. It can be hard to get started, but you don't regret do it. So do it. Creativity is just like that. Do it. Have some regular writing practice, some creative practice that just keeps you dancing in that way. One of the things that people do that I want to caution you not to do is to fall into any kind of all or nothing thinking. And by this, I mean to say to yourself, well, I'm not really working on a novel right now, so there's no point in sitting down to write. Or I only have a half an hour and it's only worth it if I have an hour. So it's not, that you create these all or nothing scenarios in which whatever circumstances you have circumstances. We all have circumstances, whatever circumstances we're in, do not meet your arbitrary criteria for what it takes for you to actually sit down and do some creative work. So therefore, nothing can happen. It's like, you know what? Have a little bit. Just do what's available to you. Relax about it. It's not, maybe you plan to write for 2 hours and then there's a plumbing emergency. So now the plumber's going to be here in 45 minutes and there goes your writing time. Guess what? You still have 45 minutes. Just do it. Just do it. Okay. Please honor your creative energies. It is an important form of self-care. If you're a creative person and you do not, you don't let that piece of you lose. It's like, it's like having a rambunctious dog that needs to run free. And instead they're trapped in an apartment and nobody wants to take them to the dog run. It's not okay. You've got to let that energy out. Now, all your creative energies are valuable and they're all related, right? You may say, writing is my path, but look at art, listen to music, dance around the house. It's all part of your creative energy. And writing certainly can feel cerebral, right? It could feel like something that happens in our heads, not a physical undertaking. But you need to get out of your head because storytelling is about the full human experience. It's about the experience of being in a body. It's about the experience of being in the environment. It's about the experience of having fluctuating emotions. It's about our complex psychologies. It's about our intellectual curiosity. I mean, being human is about all of these things. And therefore, writing is also about all of these things. So open it up, throw the windows open, get out of your head, take a look at your fellow human beings, get relational with them. Books are fabulous. I totally agree with the insight of Harold Bloom that we started this live stream looking at. Books are incredible. It's one of the reasons I think many of us are driven to write is that it creates this pure impulse to connect with others. Um, but it's not the only way. You do have friends in real life. You do have people, right? You be relational, be in relationship with others. Be curious about other people. That's your subject matter. It's your subject matter. Be curious about your own humanity and the humanity and others. And then you can do your writer thing. So, my 5 tips to wrap up is to be a student of yourself. Be curious about yourself. Observe what triggers the seesaw of your emotions. Let's see what you can learn from it. If you discover that you have mistaken beliefs or mistaken expectations about what this work and career is like, correct them. Correct them. Allow yourself to learn and be corrected. That's 2. Find a writing community that's positive and that holds you up and that makes you feel like you are supported, and give back to that writing community as well, right? They need you to contribute as much positive energy as you receive. Seek mentors. Don't be shy about seeking mentors. Be curious about writers who have a little bit more experience. They've got stuff to teach you. And last of all, keep writing. Keep writing. Be happy. That's our theme today. I am going to look at the comments for a second and see. We've got lots of comments from Robert, and I really appreciate that. Question about whether this is on the YouTube channel. Yes, I have a YouTube channel, and on that YouTube channel, if you're not familiar with it, are at this point, I want to say close to a year's worth, quite a lot of weekly live streams about a whole range of topics having to do with writing craft, story structure, and the mindset of the working writer, just like this one. So you can head on over there and subscribe to the channel, and there is a wealth of information for you. Okay, thank you. I'm glad. Look forward to seeing you as a subscriber over there. Appreciate it very much. And I'm going to end with this nice quote from Robert. Writing is joyous when you're in the moment you fly. It just takes wings that you have to build up every time. That's right. That's absolutely right. What a beautiful image. And how do we build those wings? We have to get in the chair first. We have to get to work first. We can't be afraid of approaching our writing and waiting for the wings to sprout and carry us over to the seat. Sit down and get to work. You're going to sprout wings before you know it. All right. Thank you all so much for coming. It's an honor to talk to you guys every Wednesday. I really appreciate you being here live. Okay. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Also, YouTube likes it if you give me a little thumbs up. It helps get the channel put in front of more eyeballs. And this is something that we want to have happen. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you for being part of this community. I'll see you next time.